poverty as a challenge. Learning about poverty trends in India and the world are illustrated through the concept of the poverty line. This chapter deals with one of the most difficult challenges faced by independent India: poverty. Introduction. In our daily life, we come across many people who we think are poor. They could be landless laborers in villages or people living in overcrowded juggies in cities. They could be daily wage workers at construction sites or child workers in dhabas. They could also be beggars with children in tatters. We see poverty all around us. In fact, every fourth person in India is poor. This means roughly 260 million or 26 crore people in India live in poverty. This also means that India has the largest single concentration of the poor in the world. This illustrates the seriousness of the challenge. Two typical cases of poverty. Urban case. 33-year-old Ram Saran works as a daily wage laborer in a wheat flour mill near Ranchi in Jharkhand. He manages to earn around rupees 1,500 a month when he finds employment, which is not often. The money is not enough to sustain his family of 6. That includes his wife and 4 children aged between 12 years to 6 months. He has to send money home to his old parents, who live in a village near Ramgarh. His father, a landless laborer, depends on Ram Saran and his brother, who lives in Hazaribagh, for sustenance. Ram Saran lives in a one-room rented house in a crowded basti in the outskirts of the city. It's a temporary shack built of bricks and clay tiles. His wife, Santa Devi, works as a part-time maid in a few houses and manages to earn another rupees 800. They manage a meager meal of dal and rice twice a day. But there's never enough for all of them. His elder son works as a helper in a tea shop to supplement the family income and earns another rupees 300, while his 10-year-old daughter takes care of the younger siblings. None of the children go to school. They have only 2 pairs of hand-me-down clothes each. New ones are bought only when the old clothes become unwearable. Shoes are a luxury. The younger kids are undernourished. They have no access to health care when they fall ill. Rural case. Lakha Singh belongs to a small village near Meerut in Uttar Pradesh. His family doesn't own any land, so they do odd jobs for the big farmers. At times, the poor farm laborers get paid rupees 50 for a hard day's work, but often it's in kind, like a few kilograms of wheat or dal or even vegetables for toiling in the farm through the day. The family of 8 cannot always manage 2 square meals a day. Lakha lives in a kacha hut on the outskirts of the village. The women of the family spend the day chopping fodder and collecting firewood in the fields. His father, a TB patient, passed away 2 years ago due to lack of medication. His mother now suffers from the same disease and life is slowly ebbing away. Although the village has a primary school, Lakha never went there. He had to start earning when he was 10 years old. New clothes happen once in a few years. Even soap and oil are a luxury for the family. These two typical cases illustrate many dimensions of poverty. They show that poverty means hunger and lack of shelter. It also is a situation in which parents are not able to send their children to school, or a situation where sick people cannot afford treatment. Poverty also means lack of clean water and sanitation facilities. It also means lack of a regular job at a minimum decent level. Above all, it means living with a sense of helplessness. Poor people are in a situation in which they are ill-treated at almost every place, in farms, factories, government offices, hospitals, railway stations, etc. Poverty as seen by social scientists. Since poverty has many facets, social scientists look at it through a variety of indicators. Usually the indicators used relate to the levels of income and consumption. But now poverty is looked through other social indicators like illiteracy level, lack of general resistance due to malnutrition, lack of access to health care, lack of job opportunities, lack of access to safe drinking water, sanitation, etc. Social exclusion. According to this concept, poverty must be seen in terms of the poor having to live only in a poor surrounding with other poor people, excluded from enjoying social equality of better off people in better surroundings. A typical example is the working of the caste system in India, in which people belonging to certain castes are excluded from equal opportunities. Vulnerability. Vulnerability to poverty is a measure which describes the greater probability of certain communities, say a member of a backward caste, or individuals such as a widow or a physically handicapped person, of becoming or remaining poor in the coming years. Vulnerability is determined by the options available to different communities for finding an alternative living in terms of assets, education, health, and job opportunities. Further, it is analyzed on the basis of the greater risk these groups face at the time of natural disasters, earthquakes, tsunami, terrorism, etc. Poverty line. At the center of the discussion on poverty is usually the concept of the poverty line. A common method used to measure poverty is based on the income or consumption level. A person is considered poor if his or her income or consumption level falls below a given minimum level necessary to fulfill basic needs. For example, while determining the poverty line in India, a minimum level of food requirement, clothing, footwear, fuel, and light, educational and medical requirement, etc., are determined for subsistence. These physical quantities are multiplied by their prices in rupees. The present formula for food requirement while estimating the poverty line is based on the desired calorie requirement. Food items such as celeries, pulses, vegetable, milk, oil, sugar, etc. together provide these needed calories. The calorie needs vary depending on age, sex, and the type of work that a person does. Since people living in rural areas engage themselves in more physical work, calorie requirements in rural areas are considered to be higher than urban areas. The monetary expenditure per capita needed for buying these calorie requirements in terms of food grains, etc., is revised periodically, taking into consideration the rise in prices. On the basis of this calculation, for the year 2000, the poverty line for a person was fixed at Rs 328 per month for the rural areas and Rs 454 for the urban areas. In this way, in the year 2000, a family of 5 members living in rural areas and earning less than about Rs 1640 per month will be below the poverty line. A similar family in the urban areas would need a minimum of Rs 2270 per month to meet their basic requirements. The poverty line is estimated periodically, normally every 5 years, by conducting sample surveys. These surveys are carried out by the National Sample Survey Organization (NSSO). However, for making comparisons between developing countries, many international organizations like the World Bank use a uniform standard for the poverty line. Minimum availability of the equivalent of $1 per person per day. An individual above a monthly consumption of Rs 859.6 in urban and Rs 672.8 in rural areas is not considered poor, as per the controversial formula. Furthermore, the Plan Panel has kept the poverty threshold even lower than it submitted to the Supreme Court last year, which created an outcry among the civil society. The Plan Panel had said in its affidavit before the Apex Court that the poverty line at June 2011 price level can be placed provisionally at Rs 965.32 per day per capita per month in urban areas and rupees 781.26 per day in rural areas. Poverty estimates. There is substantial decline in poverty ratios in India from about 55% in 1973 to 36% in 1993. The proportion of people below poverty line further came down to about 26% in 2000. If the trend continues, people below poverty line may come down to less than 20% in the next few years. Although the percentage of people living under poverty declined in the earlier two decades, 1973 to 1993, the number of poor remained stable around 320 million for a fairly long period. Vulnerable groups. Social groups which are most vulnerable to poverty are scheduled caste and scheduled tribe households. Similarly, among the economic groups, the most vulnerable groups are the rural agricultural labor households and the urban casual labor households. The following graph shows the percentage of poor people in all these groups. Although the average for people below poverty line for all groups in India is 26.51 out of 100 people belonging to scheduled tribes are not able to meet their basic needs. Apart from these social groups, there is also inequality of incomes within a family. In poor families, all suffer, but some suffer more than others. Women, elderly people, and female infants are systematically denied equal access to resources available to the family. Therefore, women, children, especially the girl child, and the old people are poorest of the poor. That is all in this topic.